It's a sweltering afternoon in June and England is in the grip of World Cup fever. But at Westminster City School, it's too hot even for football, as pupils try to fight that delicious combination of exam nerves and end-of-year fatigue. This week's teaching challenger is about to arrive, someone whose attempt to practice what he once preached will be relished by many teachers. Former Education Secretary David Blunkett will be taking over Elena Soto's Year 11 poetry class.
The summer holidays will expect you to be reading, and we'll give you a book list to start wading your way through. And what we're going to do today is we're going to study some poetry, but not poetry as we normally study it, because rather than me teaching you, you're going to have a guest teacher, and that guest teacher is David Blunkett. How do you feel about that? About having a complete stranger, but not a stranger, a very famous stranger. How do you feel about that?
I don't know, pretty interesting.
Interesting.
Before the poetry lesson begins, Mr. Blunkett compares temperatures and talks lesson plans with Ms. Soto.
Well, I've got quite a lot of sympathy actually, Eleanor, because it's one of those very rare, wonderful summer days, and it's like a greenhouse in here, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you have to put up with this all the time on the top floor?
Yes, on the top floor in the whole building. It's a Victorian building with the sun streaming through. It's like this all the time, yes.
And so, doing poetry in this environment, we could do with a glass of white wine or something, couldn't we? That would be really nice for the students. I just wondered if you'd tell me a little bit about the class, because they sound very bright students. And
they are very bright. There are top students, obviously. They've all got A's and B's minimum at GCSE.
This is making life too easy for me. So actually you presented me with the most wonderful students, which is cheating, really.
Well, it is as easy as it's going to get in a school like this, definitely. Absolutely. Because they're charming and polite.
And it's a very mixed school, isn't it? This is inner city comprehensive.
Inner city comprehensive, very culturally mixed, but it works extremely well.
Well, you're going to have to help me out, because I might get some of the names mispronounced.
I think they're quite straightforward, actually, the names.
Well, they are for you, but not always for me. So I shall have a go at that. I'm looking forward to it very much. I mean, we're going to be talking about two authors that I love, Christina Rossetti and Philip Larkin. Have they done any of this?
They know Larkin extremely well. Rossetti, I'm hoping that you are.
Work.
Yes,
it's hard
I
work.
don't like Christina Rossetti, so I'm hoping that you're going to enlighten me as well, actually.
Well, I'll do my best, but whether I'll succeed is another matter.
I think it's going to be interesting to be taught by a man who's been covered by the media so much.
Like usually we'd have an English teacher teaching us, and now we've got David Blunkett coming in, which is quite strange.
I don't really know how much he knows about poetry, so I don't know really what we're going to learn.
It will be a real insight into what it will be like to not be able to see the world and then still read a poem that has quite a lot of imagery in it.
I think he'll do very well. I don't see why he shouldn't. They're very responsive. They had a trainee teacher last term and they were a little nervous about that initially, but once they got used to him, they were great with him. They're very friendly.
After a few moments to compose his thoughts, Mr. Blunkett's teaching challenge begins.
Hi. Your name is?
Sasha.
Sasha, really good to see you. Who's with you? You're? Jasmine. Do you normally have to put up with the heat in here? It's deadly, isn't it?
Once the students are in place, Elena takes up position to monitor the lesson, and her pupils get straight to the issue of blindness and poetic imagery.
Yeah, I just don't understand how you can create an image in your head if you haven't actually seen it in real life.
I mean, what's the response from the rest of you? Can you shut your eyes and have an image behind your eyes that you could imagine coming out of prose and poetry? Ali, what about you?
I just keep on thinking that you'd only be able to see that imagery if you knew what it was in the first place, and perhaps someone who was blind couldn't actually picture that imagery in the first place. Or
Lorna, is that your point? That if you haven't seen it in the first place, how do you imagine it? Yeah. It's almost a combination of putting other senses together. It's actually building up a picture from your own life experiences, from touch, from smell, from standing on a hillside and feeling the breeze and the sun on your face, and being able to picture what other people have fed in. It's quite hard to do that without actually having those kind of images up in your mind.
That's an interesting question to pose, actually. Make them think.
Aaron, it might be appropriate if you read us Christina Rossetti's Remember Me. So when you're ready, Aaron.
Remember me when I'm gone away, gone far away into the silent land, when you can no more hold me by the hand, nor I half turn to go, yet turning stay. Remember me when no more day by day you tell me of our future that you planned. Only remember me, you understand it will be late to counsel then or pray. Yet if you should forget me for a while, and afterwards remember, do not grieve. For if the darkness and corruption leave a vestige of the thoughts that once I had, better by far you should forget and smile, than that you should remember and be sad.
Now that's fairly easy imagery, even if you can't see, isn't it? Because you're not actually dealing with anything physical, you're dealing with emotions, and it's a very sad poem, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, did you all get the fact, coming at it fresh, that she's actually picturing someone who's dying? Well, it could be of lost love without dying, couldn't it? I think if you read it as lost love, that brings it alive probably a bit more. And I just wondered, Ali, whether you got anything out of that at all.
From the poem in general?
Yeah.
It seems, I know it might be cruel to say this, but it seems pretty generic, to be honest with you. Because I talk about all the happy memories instead of the lonely memories, even though the lonely ones are the ones that probably would dominate.
Yeah, and in one sense, she's actually wanting the person not to be miserable with the memories, but to have captured something during the time together that is worth holding on to and keeping close to your heart after it's gone. And for old codgers who have experienced all this through their lives, that is quite emotional.
He's got a good manner with them. Straightforward, down to earth. I like that.
I'm going to do something a bit odd, really. I'm going to come back to Christina Rossetti, but on exactly that theme, Philip Larkin wrote No Road, which very few people actually are familiar with. Paloma, you're going to read it to us, aren't you?
Since we agreed to let the road between us fall to disuse, and bricked our gates up, planted trees to screen us, and turned all time's eroding agents loose, silence and space and strangers, our neglect has not had much effect. Leaves drift unswept, perhaps, grass creeps unmown, no other change. So clear it stands, so little overgrown. Walking that way tonight would not seem strange, and still would be followed. A little longer, and time would be the stronger. Drafting a world when no such road will run from you to me, to watch that world come up like a cold sun, rewarding others is my liberty. Not to prevent it is my will's fulfillment, willing it my ailment.
Thank you very much. Did you get anything out of the poem?
Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting poem, and it uses a lot of words which actually mean other things, and about how we use things to cover us up.
Yeah.
How we hide behind things, as it says, and about the screens, and about the bricks and being gated up, being covered.
Yeah. I like the silence and space and strangers. Our neglect has not had much effect. You know, there's a sort of imagery there, isn't there?
Yeah. We really got to think about it deeply to understand it.
Yeah. Ali, were you going to read me Birthday by Christina Rossetti? Let's have a turn to that and see what you make of it.
My heart is like a singing bird, whose nest is in a watered shoot. My heart is like an apple tree, whose boughs are bent with thick-set fruit. My heart is like a rainbow shell that paddles in a halcyon sea. My heart is gladder than all these, because my love has come to me. Raise me a dais of silk and down, hang it with vair and purple dyes, cave it in doves and pomegranates and peacocks with 100 eyes. Work it in gold and silver grapes, in leaves and silver fleurs de lis, because the birthday of my life is come, my life has come to me.
Jasmine, that's much more flowery, isn't it? Yeah, literally.
I don't particularly like this poem.
You don't like this one either?
Not really.
No.
It's quite simplistic.
Does anybody else like it?
I don't think the simplistic nature should be a criticism, because I think that's the point. It's not supposed to be very deep.
To me, it just seems like every line is like almost a cliche. It just doesn't really seem to be saying a lot. It just seems like to me like a really simple poem.
Okay, that's good. Bit of banter going.
I'm going to go against everyone here because I actually prefer Christina Rossetti's poems to Philip Larkin's boring stuff.
Yeah.
They're easier to imagine. You can feel the love coming out of them.
Well, you can certainly feel Raise Me a Dais of Silk and Down, can't you? That's fairly evocative.
Quite erotic.
With the temperature still climbing, David offers the class a break and the chance to meet his loyal assistant.
She's done this in the House of Commons. Oh yeah, Michael Howard, the previous leader of the Tory party, was speaking and she did the dead dog. Brought the house down.
I assume you've been blind from birth, so if that's the case, how and what do you dream about, if anything?
It's hard to describe. I dream, like we're having this conversation now, I dream that you're here, that you're talking to me, that I can't actually see your image, but I can see light behind you because I see light and dark, and the room would be just the same room that we were in. I hope it won't be a nightmare, actually, of taking the class. But it's not seeing distances. So you don't, as you would, see from a hillside across a valley, you don't see the trees in the distance, but you do see the imagination that I would have standing in my garden, listening to the birds sing, and that would be in the dream. So it's all tactile, it's all emotions and impositions that have built up in my mind and my memory over the years. You're welcome.
From dreams, it's back to reality as Eleanor adopts the position to observe the second half of David Blunkett's poetry class.
I just wanted to go round and find out, each of you, whether you actually think that poetry matters or whether you've been put off it by having to study it formally. Jasmine, what do you think?
I definitely think that poetry matters because I think you can express your views through poetry and you can show there's depth to you. And Christina Rossetti, though it seems like a simplistic poem, there might be some depth to it, and it's interesting to study.
Do you find that easier than maybe putting it down in prose?
Yeah, I do.
You can get more emotion
through
out of it.
poems.
Moazim, where are you? Moazim?
I don't really read poetry outside A-level, and I think it's because I don't really think poetry has much of a place in modern life, because poetry, it's always been a form of getting your personal feelings out. And in modern times, there's a lot more different ways of putting your point across. For example, almost everyone these days has a blog on the internet or something like that, whereby they just write what they're thinking at that time.
Not very romantic, though, is it? A blog?
No, but it isn't supposed to be romantic. It's like a diary. That's what a poem should be. It should be your personal feelings at one particular moment.
I think that's very interesting. I mean, do any of the rest of you think that there are more modern means now of expression that didn't exist, 50 years ago?
I think they fall short of poetry, really. It seems really bland compared to expressing your feelings in a poem. It lacks flair, really.
And Paloma, are you into blogs or poetry?
I definitely don't think that something like a blog can replace poetry because it's a completely different thing. It's not it's just kind of something people do to take up their time as opposed to something to do to write about anything or try and say anything.